In this video, we are going to explore two distinct types of forces, which are known as contact forces and non-contact forces, and we will also look at some real-life examples to help clarify each type. But before diving into those categories, it is important to first understand what we actually mean by the word force. A force can be described as a push or a pull that is exerted on an object as a result of its interaction with another object. Forces are measured using a unit called newtons, which allows us to quantify their strength or magnitude. For instance, when a person uses their hand, which is one object, to push a box, which is a second object, they are applying a force to it, for example, a force of 5 newtons. However, when we talk about force, we do not just consider its magnitude, we also have to take into account the direction in which the force is applied. So, in our example, we could say that the force is acting to the right. Because force includes both a size and a direction, it is considered a vector quantity, and not just a scalar quantity, which would only include magnitude. Now, all the different kinds of forces we encounter can be sorted into two main categories, which are contact forces and non-contact forces. The essential difference between the two lies in whether or not the objects involved are physically touching each other. Contact forces only occur when the two interacting objects are in direct contact with each other. For example, friction is a classic contact force because it only happens when two surfaces rub against each other, such as a board sliding across sand. Air resistance is another example of a contact force, since an object like a dog's face must come into contact with the air particles in order to feel the resistance that slows it down. Another example is tension, which is a pulling force that is transmitted through a rope or string when it is pulled tight by forces acting from opposite ends. Then we have the normal contact force, also called the reaction force, which happens when an object is supported by a surface. For instance, if a heavy rock is placed on a table, its weight will exert a downward force due to gravity, but the table must push back with an equal force in the opposite direction to keep the rock from falling. This upward supporting force from the table is what we call the normal contact force. On the other hand, non-contact forces are those that do not require the two objects to be physically touching at all. These forces can act across space and can influence objects even when they are separated by a distance. There are three primary types of non-contact forces that you should be familiar with, which are gravitational force, magnetic force, and electrostatic force. When we discuss non-contact forces, we often describe them in terms of fields surrounding the objects, such as gravitational fields or magnetic fields. These fields represent the region of influence where the force can be felt by other objects. Gravitational force, for example, is the force of attraction between any two objects that possess mass, such as the Earth and a person. Even if you were suspended above the ground and not touching the surface, you would still feel the pull of gravity drawing you downwards. Magnetic forces can either attract or repel depending on the orientation of the magnetic poles, and we will go into more detail about this in a separate video dedicated to magnetism. Electrostatic forces are interactions between charged particles or objects, and these too can be either attractive or repulsive depending on the nature of the charges involved. We will explore these forces further in another video as well. One important thing to note about all non-contact forces is that the strength of the force generally decreases as the distance between the objects increases. So whether it is gravity, magnetism, or electrostatic force, they all become weaker the farther apart the interacting objects are. That brings us to the end of this video. We hope you found this explanation helpful and that it has given you a clearer understanding of both contact and non-contact forces. If you enjoyed learning with us, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more educational content. We will see you next time.